Welcome back to the Ripewave audio community, where we explore together all types of home audio systems from hi-fi to home theater. My name is John, and for this video we will experiment with new 8K HDMI cables to see if they can resolve sync issues I am having with SACD Playback. If you watch the Ripewave audio video entitled Sony UBP-X1100ES Audio Optimization for Music Playback Part 2, HDMI Audio to Processor, you would have heard about my issues getting Super Audio discs to playback consistently over HDMI to an Emotiva UMC-200 processor. While I did get the playback to work, I had to disable HDMI controls, and I still had to restart the player to resolve sound loss I was experiencing, particularly when swapping discs after a successful session. For those that may have missed that video, I have provided links and a playlist to those for your convenience. As this challenge continues to nag me, I decided to purchase some new HDMI cables which claim to support the highest bandwidths and features. Rather than seeking out the most expensive options, I did just the opposite and focused on budget-conscious cables on Amazon with the most modern specifications. For the search, I made sure to select a cable with 8K support. An 8K capable cable should, by definition, come along with HDMI 2.1 support, which is the latest HDMI standard and the only one to support HK, a 48 gigabits per second bandwidth for 8K at 60 kilohertz, HDR support, eARC support, Dolby Vision support, and others. While I have listened to some AV enthusiasts who are still purchasing 4K cables as they feel 8K content will take a few years to arrive, I understand that an 8K cable will handle 4K and lower content requirements just fine. Furthermore, the cost difference at this price point that I'm searching for is negligible. Another cable feature which is important to me is to have the cable grade clearly labeled on the connector. And looking at my current collection of HDMI cables, it is very hard or nearly impossible to know the version of HDMI or video standards they were designed for. While the connector looks very generic, some provide clues on the cable jacket, such as words that say high-speed cable with Ethernet. However, that cable was one that had failed previously. I decided to purchase two Lincoln Perk 8K HDMI cables, one 3 feet and one 6 feet in length. I understand shorter lengths should provide the greatest chance for success. Both cables otherwise have the same specifications and met my criteria for standard support. For super audio, the key attribute should be the bandwidth, and these cables claim to support 48 gigabits per second. At $10.99 for a 6-foot length and $7.99 for a 3-foot length, these are certainly considered budget-friendly cables. If these do the trick, I don't see a reason to jump to higher cost cables for similar distances. What I like about these is the connectors are labeled as HDMI HK. So I should be able to pick them up from a bunch of cables and know that these are the ones with the higher capability. 3 days later, I have the upgraded 8K HDMI cables. Now I need to test, but the HDMI capable processor has since been returned to my mom's setup. Rather than disrupt her configuration again, let's take the Sony UHD player to her house and test there. That should be a lot simpler. Would you like to come along with me? Okay, let's go over to Mom's house and see if these new cables can make the difference. Hey Bentley, do you want to go to Grammy's? Do you want to go to Grammy's? Bentley, you ready? You waiting? You're waiting to listen. Well, we have to hook it up first, right? I can't, we just came over here. We have to switch it out and we have to put the cables in and then we're going to see if it works, okay? Just be patient. Okay, now here's my mom's setup here. And we have to find a spot because she's got a nice rack here, but it's pretty much full. And we want to test short cable lengths, so we'll have to take something out. But I know this vintage ADC sound shaper equalizer is just filling up space. It's not plugged in, but this is a classic from the 80s. So we'll put the Sony Blu-ray player right up where that was. And then we'll come back into the room behind and we'll wire it up. And for the test here, I remove her Amazon Fire Stick temporarily and plug in an HDMI cable. This is the cable that originally failed into HDMI 1 of the UMC-200. On the Sony ultra high definition player, I'll simply put the other end onto output 2, which is the audio only connection for that. So we plug this in, and while it worked at first, when you stop the player and restart it, it comes up with that no audio display on the Emotiva, and we don't hear anything out the speaker. The only way to resolve this is to take the disc out, put it back in to the player and restart, and this usually resolves the issue. And in this case it's still not. The other thing I've had to do is completely shut down the player, and now I'm completely powering it off, restarting it and hitting play, and it's still not working. So in this case we could even shut down the Emotiva, restart the whole thing, and wait for the amp to get up to speed, and then hit play. And then it works. So in this case it was so far out of sync that we had to restart both the player and the UMC-200. Now we'll try a newer cable. Okay, so now I've got the cables that we got from Amazon. I'll take them out of the package here. And geez, for the cost, you're getting an 8K cable, and they've got nice little ties on it. And the other thing that I like, and I don't know if you can see, is it says 8K on the end of the cable. So let's get these plugged in. We're going to start with the 6-foot length to see if the 6-foot length makes a difference. And if that doesn't work, we'll go to the 3-foot length. I know, Bentley, no sound. You can't hear it? No. We'll get it, don't worry, we'll get it to work, okay? We'll get it to work. At this point we have the 6-foot length of the new 8K cable attached. We're going to power up the Emotiva and get that going. And so since this is starting from an off position on both the Blu-ray player and the AV processor, we know that any sync issues that were blocking it up are now removed. And we're going to try our playback, and we expect it to work on the first pass as it is, but the problem we have is when we stop this and try to restart the track, this is where we normally have the sync issues. Let's see if this resolved it. No, it didn't.
Oh, God.
It didn't. So we still have the same problem on the sync. Let me try the shorter cable. Okay, let's go one more time with this time a 3-foot cable. Turn on the Emotiva, turn on the Blu-ray player, do the quick test. So it does the initial play, we stop it, now we try to resume play. Okay, so even with the new cables, it's still doing this. So the question is it a configuration setting that's holding me up? Is it the fact that I didn't get the more expensive 8K cable? Or is there something either inherently wrong in the Sony UBP-X1100ES player or the Emotiva UMC-200? Yesterday I came back from Mom's a little disappointed that the new 8K HDMI cables did not resolve the SACD playback issues I am experiencing. However, I am not one to easily give up. Last night I dug a little deeper into the forums where this issue is being discussed to see if I could find more suggestions. In reviewing, I found several threads with guidance I had already explored. However, I found one discussion on the Emotiva Lounge site and also on the Blu-ray.com forum that is new to me, and I am hopeful will address this issue once and for all. They suggested that the UMC-200 HDMI output to the TV could be the cause of the conflict. They described their issue very similarly to what I am experiencing, and removing the HDMI output to the TV solved their problem. So I went back to test with Mom's system with that suggestion and hope for improvement. While the second session did not result in resolving all issues, I have at least pinpointed 2 issues which appear to be unrelated to cable quality. I began the second session by removing all HDMI cables from the UMC-200 except for those coming from the X1100ES player using my best cable, the new 3-foot 8K HDMI cable. Unfortunately, I was still experiencing the same problem. However, this time I realized I had been hitting the home button on the UHD player's remote instead of the stop button. Reconducting the test by starting and stopping playback using the play-stop buttons, I discovered playback using that method works every time. And then I went back and retested with each test condition using generic unknown HDMI cables, plugging in all the HDMI cables, including the HDMI out to the TV, enabling HDMI control on the UHD player, enabling HDMI control on the UMC-200 processor, and enabling CEC on the UMC-200. And with each test, I could start-stop, Super Audio CD playback, change disc, and change tracks, all without an issue. However, in each case, hitting the home button on the X1100ES player's remote would cause playback audio to fail, and I could only resume playback with audio by power cycling the UHD player. I also found that enabling CEC auto source on the UMC-200 caused the most severe issues. When that mode is enabled, I had multiple issues. the UMC-200 would automatically switch to another input. No audio would be on the UMC-200 even if I switch to the input for the UHD player. And no video output to the TV, just a blue screen. But the UMC menus were still displayable on the TV. Disabling CEC auto source on the UMC-200 instantly resumed Super Audio CD playback without the need to power cycle. The result is an experience which, although not ideal, I can live with. I can leave the setup in a pretty normal state with HDMI control enabled and play back a Super Audio CD in high res with multi-channel output as long as I don't hit the home button during the session. The need to hit the home button for HDMI playback is low, as changing configurations is not common. The other loss is CEC control. Now, CEC is something I want to learn more about and will likely be a topic for a future video. I often find CEC control to be a bit aggressive, with devices turning on and off when I don't want them to. So with this setting disabled, I am at least in control of when devices are powered on and powered off. Now let's review. We started down the HDMI playback path due to the copyright limitations of Super Audio CD, and because my Sony X1100ES Blu-ray player does not have multi-channel analog outputs. This leaves HDMI as the only option to deliver high-res and multi-channel output from the player. The only UHD players available today with multi-channel analog output are from Panasonic, but those players don't support SACD. So unless I move to the used market, I need to leverage the HDMI output to get high-res multi-channel signals to my processor. I don't know if the Pioneer LX500 would experience the same issue, but I would rather stay at the $500 price point. I did learn from the online forums what areas to look into. The guidance from those forums has been: 1. Start with a good HDMI cable. 2. Set the UHD player to output PCM only if the processor does not support DSD. So in my case with the Sony X1100ES, DSD output mode is set to off. 3. Turn off HDMI control at the player and processor. 4. Ensure the Emotiva HDMI output is set to amplifier. And 5. Unplug the HDMI output to the TV from the Emotiva. For my setup, the settings for the UHD player to output PCM only and setting the HDMI output on the Emotiva to amplifier were both on track and necessary. The other recommendations did not impact the results, albeit the advice to disable HDMI control did lead me to take a look at the CEC control setting, which turned out to be the main issue. My issue with the use of the home button on the Sony X1100ES when playing Super Audio CD does not appear to be a topic covered in the forums, but I will keep looking. I believe the key lesson learned is to use forum advice as a guide, but also realize that you may need to perform your own troubleshooting to arrive at the best resolution. As far as cable quality, it appears that cable quality did not impact the end result in this case. So I will continue to stick with my belief that if you are seeing and hearing everything without dropouts, the HDMI cable is good enough. If you also own a Sony X1100ES or a similar player, I would be interested in hearing your feedback. Are you also experiencing issues with SACD playback over HDMI? That feedback would be useful to the Ripewave audio community. Furthermore, if you enjoyed this video and are interested in enhancing your audio experience, please like and subscribe to this Ripewave audio community, and be sure to select that bell icon so you'll be notified as soon as the next video is posted. Until then, keep evolving your audio experience.